The NBA is becoming an extremely deep league, and with the sheer volume of talent entering said league, it's widely opened up the total possibilities for key additions that teams can look to make come the new year should the start of their season not go to plan. So it's probably a good idea to look at a few of these high-level players that could be hitting the trade market come January. First starting off this list is Jarrett Allen. This season the Cavs have came out hot, and a key part of that is actually because of Jarrett Allen, so it may seem a little weird having him at the top of this list. But the truth is, having him on this roster is a bit redundant. Obviously there is a little bit of a Twin Towers situation going on between Allen and Evan Mobley, but unfortunately that pairing hasn't been as impactful as many fans and I'm sure the front office was hoping. Not saying that it's been bad, but just not the results that were in mind. And so with Mobley taking another step forward this season, the franchise is seemingly testing him out a bit more at the 5 position, which Mobley could definitely step into, thus kind of making Jarrett Allen's role a bit reductive. If that is indeed what the franchise is doing, then it could serve more of a purpose than just getting rid of the redundancies and splitting the pair up. As mentioned, the Cavs have started this season on fire, but there is a major difference between how the regular season is played and how the playoffs are played. And if the Cavs ever run into the Celtics in the postseason, the holes in the team's wing defense will be exposed over a 7-game series. So if the team was to make a trade in January or February involving Jarrett Allen, this could free them up to go out and grab a solid wing. Between Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Evan Mobley, the offense is there, so you really just need to find a guy that can guard 1 through 5 reliably. So because of the team's overall needs and the most likely direction, I would suspect that Jarrett Allen gets put on the trading block sooner rather than later. Now moving on to another player that might come as a surprise to some NBA fans, Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's no secret that the Milwaukee Bucks do not look good this year. You can chalk that up, as many fans already have, to not only having Doc Rivers on your bench, but also Darvin Ham.
Go hard on them dudes. Everybody's trying to play the right way. Salute.
Which, I gotta admit, has been pretty disastrous for anyone not named Taurean Prince. But personally, I believe the main thing holding this group back is their horrid defending. It's why Giannis can drop 34, 16, and 9 while Dame gets a 40-piece and they still lose the game. So if the season continues on this trajectory and ends in a similar fashion as last year, I would not be surprised whatsoever if this is Giannis's last year in Milwaukee. Over the last decade or so, we've seen more players asking, or outright demanding, that they be traded as the NBA shifts from an owner's league to a player's league. However, through this shift, it's rarely the international guys that ask out. It's usually been guys like Harden, KD, or Kyrie, while the international guys are more than willing to bite the bullet and stay loyal to one franchise. But we could be seeing that start to change with Giannis. After the brutal 1-6 start by the Bucks, many websites started running stories that Giannis might be asking out after this season. But there was actually a quote from Giannis at the start of the season that probably should have gotten more traction than it did at the time. At the beginning of October, Giannis was quoted by The Athletic's Sam Amick saying, quote, "If we don't win a championship this year, I might get traded. This is the job we live." End quote. Which is a pretty odd thing to say, seeing as there was absolutely zero hints or similar sentiment given or ever expressed by the front office. So if he does get traded, Giannis might be the first player in NBA history to successfully get a team to trade him through sheer reverse psychology. So although this trade probably won't happen at the start of the new year, if the franchise doesn't make serious moves to bolster their roster and especially their defense by then, I'd keep an eye on Giannis over next year's offseason.
Next up is Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine's future with the Chicago Bulls has been one of the NBA's most persistent storylines, and this season it feels like we're finally approaching a breaking point. For years, the Bulls have tried to make their discount super team experiment of Zach, Lonzo Ball, and DeMar DeRozan work. Injuries, inconsistency, and a lack of real postseason success have left the franchise in a state of limbo though. Now with DeRozan already traded and Lonzo's health still a massive question mark even if he's playing now, it seems inevitable that the Bulls will hit the reset button. And when they do, LaVine might be the first domino to fall. This isn't a knock on LaVine's talent, in fact it's quite the opposite. He's the type of player that every team covets, a high-flying, multi-level scorer who can shoot, drive, and create create his own shot with ease. Offensively, there isn't much LaVine can't do. He's a proven 20+ points per game guy who's comfortable playing on or off the ball. That kind of versatility makes him a plug-and-play option for nearly any team in the league, whether it's a playoff contender looking to get over the hump or a rebuilding squad searching for a centerpiece. It's time for them to turn the page, and moving LaVine could bring in the kind of assets, young players, picks, or both that this franchise desperately needs to rebuild. It's hard to imagine LaVine sticking around in a full-scale rebuild when he's in his prime and capable of contributing to a contender right now. So who's calling Chicago's front office about LaVine? One team that keeps popping up in these discussions is the Los Angeles Lakers. For years, they've been linked to LaVine as a dream trade target, and with good reason. Imagine Zach LaVine alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The scoring, the athleticism, the ability to take some of the offensive load off of LeBron's shoulders, it's a great idea. And let's not forget, LaVine's California roots might make this an even more natural fit. The Lakers' window with LeBron isn't just closing, it's nearly shut. If they want to squeeze one more title run out of this roster, acquiring a dynamic scorer like LaVine could be their best shot. The question is, are they ready to finally pull the trigger? One thing is for certain, Zach LaVine isn't just another trade chip. He's a star, plain and simple, and his availability if Chicago wants to fully commit to a rebuild could change the trajectory of any team willing to pay the price. Whether it's the Lakers or another contender, someone is going to get a player who can elevate their offense to another level, and for the Bulls, moving on from LaVine might finally let them turn the page and start building for the future. Either way, a Zach LaVine trade feels less like an if and more like a when at this point. The last player on the list is Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma has been quietly thriving in his role with the Washington Wizards, well, as much as anyone can thrive when leading a team that's clearly in full tank mode. He's been productive, versatile, and frankly better than you'd expect for a guy whose primary job is steering the ship while the franchise sinks intentionally. But let's not sugarcoat this. Kuzma's presence on the team doesn't really align with where the Wizards are headed. With young talents like Bilal Coulibaly and Alex Sarr starting to show flashes of their potential, the Wizards really need to commit to their rebuild, and that means Kuzma has to go. Here's the thing, Kuzma's trade value is real, and there are definitely some teams out there who would jump at the chance to add a 6'9" forward who can score, rebound, and play multiple positions. He's not a superstar, but he's exactly the kind of complementary piece that contending teams are always hunting for. The fact that his contract is front-loaded makes him even more attractive. While Kyle Kuzma is getting paid big money now, the final 2 years of his deal are much more affordable. That's huge for teams looking to shop for impact players on a budget. In short, the Wizards have a golden opportunity to flip Kuzma for assets. Whether that's draft picks, young players, or both, that can help set the stage for their future. And let's be honest, Kuzma and Jordan Poole are not the foundation of a winning team. Sure, they'll put up some highlights, maybe drop 30 on a random Tuesday night, but that's not how you build a contender. If the Wizards cling to Kuzma, they're only delaying the inevitable. This team needs to lean into their youth movement. Let players like Coulibaly and Sarr take on larger roles and accumulate as many assets as possible to accelerate the rebuild. Holding on to Kuzma only muddies the waters and risks losing value in a player who clearly doesn't fit the long-term picture. Imagine Kuzma on a team that's actually going somewhere, a playoff contender that needs depth at forward and just that extra scoring punch. He could definitely thrive in that role, and the Wizards could reap the benefits by gaining assets they desperately need. Imagine Kuzma on a team that's actually going somewhere, a playoff contender that needs depth at forward and an extra scoring punch. He could thrive in that role, and the Wizards could reap the benefits by gaining the assets they desperately need. Teams like the Sacramento Kings, Dallas Mavericks, or even the Miami Heat come to mind as potential suitors. All of them could use a player like Kuzma, and all of them would likely pay a reasonable price to get him. If the Wizards are serious about rebuilding, and it seems like they are, given how much they've embraced the tank, they can't afford to let Kuzma stick around much longer. The young core needs minutes, touches, and responsibility to grow. Every possession that goes to Kuzma or Poole is a possession that isn't helping Coulibaly or Sarr develop. Every game Kuzma spends in DC is a missed opportunity to add to the team's treasure chest of future assets. The bottom line is this: Kyle Kuzma is good enough to help a contender, but he's not good enough to help the Wizards build their future. Washington has to make the tough but necessary move of parting ways with him. Get the assets, get the picks, let the young players take over. That's how you rebuild the right way. If the Wizards don't act soon, they risk squandering Kuzma's value and delaying their rebuild for another few seasons. And let's be clear, this team doesn't have time to waste. That does it for the list. Where do you think some of these players are likely to go? Do you think we missed some players? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. Hopefully, we'll see you next week.